Hey, everybody. So glad you're here with me tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We are going to have yet another one of our great late night conversations. Not as late as we usually have them, but that's okay. It's going to be awesome. So glad you're all here.
Century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I didn't actually time it this way, but Babis says the Jimmy Dore show ends and Caleb begins. Well, that is great timing. I love Jimmy Dore. He is a great person, standing up against the warmongers, standing up against Big Pharma. I look up to Jimmy Dore, so if he's doing that, that makes me smile. Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Always great when you do that. We're going to have yet another late night stream. It's going to be fun. I'm going to talk to you about all kinds of stuff. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the way we do things, the way these streams work, the way this show works is I give my opening remarks, which is what I'm doing now. I just tell you about what it is I'm going to talk about for tonight. And then from there, we do a roll call where we find out who it is on the other side of the camera. Names and locations. We find out who is on the other side of the camera. And it's always really exciting and really fun to see who's there. And then after that, I answer your super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there is something you would like me to talk about in the second half of our show, by all means, send me a super chat and I will type it down. And then from there, I will answer it in the second half of our show. And I will say, folks, I encourage you to take advantage of the fact that you are watching this live. Other people who watch this afterwards have no ability to influence what comes out of my mouth. You do with your super chats. If you send a super chat, you can have me answering whatever questions you want. You can have me talking about what you want. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity and send a super chat. Make the second half of our show exciting. That would be my advice. But couple announcements. We did have our first morning message this morning was recorded. I did the first one as the ideological leader of the Center for Political Innovation. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people loved it. And so we're going to have another one tomorrow. And I'm not going to say who it's by, but I'll be uploading it shortly before I go to bed. I'll be uploading the second message, and we're going to try to have a morning message every single day from a different CPI member. I have been in touch with so many people about the morning messages that they are going to do. We're going to make it a great way to start the day with a message from the Center for Political Innovation, full of hope and optimism. And so many people have stepped up to the plate and volunteered and been willing to make them. We have people that aren't even CPI members, people that are friends of the CPI, allies, people who like the work that we do are making messages. We are going to have a lot of messages. So I'm really excited. I will be uploading the file for the next one, which won't come from me. Won't be coming from me, but it'll be coming from someone very special, and that'll be tomorrow. And then we'll have another one after that and another one after that. It's going to be a great, great way to start the show. So if you want to check out and catch the morning messages, go and subscribe to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. That is where the messages are being posted. I see I just got a super chat on the Rockfin. What would a government of action do about national debt? And that's from Daniel J. So thank you, Daniel J. I will be writing that down. You're first on the list. That's the first super chat I received. I got it on the Rockfin from Daniel J. What would a government of action do about the national debt? Thank you, Daniel. Glad to have it. And like I said, folks, second half of the show is just me answering your super chat questions. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, send me a super chat. That's the way this show works. Now I'm going to pour myself some more water. And I'm going to talk to you all about a couple things. Well, quick news roundup. Couple things that you all should be aware of. First big news item is that the Kerch Bridge in Crimea was attacked. There was an attack on the Crimea Bridge, right? In Crimea, which is a section, a region that voted to join with Russia. There's a very big bridge. The biggest bridge in Europe has been constructed by the Russian government. And so clearly the Ukrainians attacked the bridge. But they didn't destroy it. And from what I understand, now, just hours after the attack, the bridge is partially opened. People are still driving across it. So it was symbolic. It was a symbolic act because that bridge in Crimea is something that, is kind of a symbol. It's symbolic. The fact that Russia has built that bridge there, that Crimea did vote to join with Russia. It's symbolic, but it didn't even stop the bridge. The bridge opened up. The bridge is open once again. And this is all to distract from the obvious reality, which is that Ukraine is losing the war. Maybe you're not aware, but Ukraine has already received $75 billion in U.S. support. $75 billion of U.S. taxpayer money has already gone to Ukraine. And they've made zero progress. Their great offensive. Remember that counteroffensive we were going to hear about, that great Ukrainian counteroffensive. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. And so to distract from the fact that they're losing the war and that they have no chance of winning, they now have attacked the bridge. And what is disturbing is that this is an act of terrorism. This is a civilian bridge. This is a bridge that people drive their cars on all the time. If someone were to attack, as Lori is saying, if someone were to attack the Golden Gate Bridge or the Washington Gate Bridge, we would see that as an act of terrorism. But U.S. media is not responding to this as an act of terrorism. And it's particularly outrageous. And it is symbolic, but it is to distract from the fact that Ukraine is losing. This war, we are learning more and more every day how much of a disgusting money laundering operation this military confrontation in Ukraine really is. So much of our money is being unloaded into Ukraine. Ukraine has no chance of winning, whatever that means. There you go. And U.S. taxpayers are getting robbed. The Ukrainian people are dying on the battlefield. Russians are also dying. This is a horrendous situation. An absolutely horrendous situation. And it's a scam, a maniacal, evil scam. So many of these weapons that have been sent to Ukraine from the United States have ended up in the hands of terrorists, have ended up on the black market, people selling them on the internet. Ukrainian oligarchs are enriching themselves. The whole situation is utterly disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. Ukraine has no chance. Let's talk about Crimea. All right, let's talk about the whole Crimea thing, right? Because, people say, well, Russia invaded Crimea. No, there was no invasion. The Russian military was already there. Crimea, as a region that has historically been associated with Russia. It's been considered to be part of Russia for hundreds of years. You may remember the Crimean War. And when the Soviet Union was declared, Crimea was part of the Russian Republic, the Russian Soviet Republic, not part of Ukraine. However, after Stalin died, Khrushchev made a deal and gave Crimea to Ukraine. But that didn't really matter because they were part of the Soviet Union anyway. They just, it would be like redrawing the borders of a U.S. state. And there was a lot less autonomy, in the Soviet Union for individual republics than there are for U.S. states. So it was really irrelevant. But just probably so that Ukraine got more money or something, as some kind of backroom deal. When Khrushchev came to power after Stalin died, they redrew the map and Crimea became part of Ukraine. Now, when the Soviet Union fell, there were all kinds of treaties about where the borders would be, etc. And an agreement was made that Crimea would remain part of Ukraine. Crimea would remain part of Ukraine as long as Russia was able to keep its big military base. Russia has a big military base in Crimea. And Crimea, peninsula, it's got a big military base. And the understanding was that Russia could keep its military base there, but it would technically be part of Ukraine. That was the deal. Well, then, you'll recall that in 2014, the United States overthrew the government of Ukraine. U.S. taxpayer money was funneled into a protest movement called Euromaidan, in which people that were being paid by NGOs and liberal activist groups associated with the United States, with George Soros and other institutions, piled into Maidan Square and demanded the overthrow of the government. And then neo-Nazi groups were deployed and there was violence in the streets. And then you'll recall that under such circumstances, after the government in Kiev was overthrown and toppled, under such circumstances, the people in Crimea, almost all of whom are somehow connected to the Russian military base there. The Russian military is already there. People work at a business, but it's connected to the Russian military base. They voted to join with Russia. And the vote was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And it was pretty basic and to the point. They voted to join with Russia. I've been to Crimea. That's Russia. I know people who've been to Crimea who've looked really, really hard to find one person in Crimea who doesn't want to join with Russia, and they cannot find anyone. I mean, there is just nobody in Crimea who wants to be part of the government in Kiev that was imposed on Ukraine in 2014. Crimea is Russia. Crimea voted to join with Russia. That whole thing, pretty straightforward. I went to the Yalta Economic Forum, and I saw that Russia is doing a lot to develop Crimea economically. All kinds of businessmen were there to make deals, and there's a lot of development going on. Yalta, by the way, that's it's an important city because of World War II. Like, negotiations took there. Beautiful place with beaches, and Yalta is very, very beautiful. And you go around Crimea. It's not a very big peninsula, and it's Russia. But the narrative that we get in Western media is that Russia invaded Crimea, Russia annexed Crimea. It's like, no, Crimea has always kind of been Russia anyway. Ukraine got Crimea after the fall of the Soviet Union, as long as they promised to let Russia keep their military base there. And then the USA violently overthrew the Ukrainian government. And so Crimea voted overwhelmingly by huge numbers to join with Russia. And I've been there and I've seen it. And I'm just telling you, Crimea is Russia. And it's this symbol for Ukraine, for Ukraine. They say, oh, this is Russian aggression. No, the aggression started in 2014 when the Ukrainian government began bombing and killing its own citizens, the people it considers to be its own people in the Donbas regions. It began killing them and bombing them and murdering them and denying them the right to speak their language and giving them fines and dragging them to court for speaking their language. When it began burning the World War II memorials and having torchlit marches to honor Nazi collaborators like Stepan Bandera. That's where the aggression started. The people of the Eastern republics, the Eastern regions, Donbass, Lugansk, Donetsk, they voted to be independent. And Russia said, no, we don't want you to join. We don't want you to join with Russia. We want you to just work out a peace deal with the Ukrainian government. And so Russia facilitated the Minsk Accords, the Minsk Agreement, which was a deal that Ukraine signed that said it would allow the people of the Eastern regions to have their autonomy, to speak their own language. It would allow them to gradually reintegrate back into Ukraine. And Ukraine made this deal and it never fulfilled it. And Zelensky, who is the current president of Ukraine, he ran for office, famous comedian in Ukraine, on a platform that he would fulfill the peace agreement. This is an important bit of information. Zelensky ran for office promising that he would fulfill the Minsk Agreement. He would fulfill the Minsk Accords. And then he got into office and he realized that he's not really the president of Ukraine. Ukraine is run by London. Ukraine is run by Washington. It's run by NATO. It's run by the Pentagon. Ukraine is not a sovereign country. So even though he got elected on a platform that he was going to make peace with Russia, when he got into office, he learned that he could not do so because Ukraine is not actually a sovereign country. And after 8 years of waiting and after endless bombardment and attacks, the people of the Eastern regions continued to call for Russia to recognize them, for Russia to allow them to join with Russia. So finally, we then saw last year the Russian government grant recognition to the Donetsk People's Republic, the Lugansk People's Republic, and then move its military in to support them. And that's what has been going on ever since. And there have been many, many potential peace deals that could have been made, but each time London and Washington have stepped in to prevent it. And billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars pour into Ukraine. And the American people are getting robbed. Our economy is falling apart. And this scam just continues. This is a scam. It is theft of the American people. It is robbery. It is a murderous criminal operation where U.S. taxpayer money is being pumped into Ukraine to keep a war going. The people of the Eastern regions will never rejoin with the government in Kiev. That's not going to happen. This government has slaughtered them. It's murdered them. It's backed neo-Nazi gangs. It's written them tickets for speaking their own language. It's never going to happen. The people of Donetsk, the people of Lugansk are never going to rejoin with Kiev. They voted to join with Russia in referendums. They voted to be independent, even when Russia wouldn't recognize their independence back in 2014. They're never going to rejoin with Russia. With Ukraine. It's not going to happen. They're part of Russia now, and that's how it's going to be. That's what's going to happen. So under these circumstances, the best option would be to negotiate, to resolve the conflict. But Biden doesn't want to do that. Biden's administration is determined to keep this war going because weapons manufacturers are making a killing and oil companies are making a killing trying to push Russia off the market. They are using this as an opportunity to push Russia off of the market. And Russia, you may have noticed, is now producing more oil than Saudi Arabia. Russia is a major oil producing country, and they are a competitor on the international markets. They are competing with BP and Chevron and Shell Oil and Exxon Mobil, the big four super major oil companies that dominate the US economy and the global economy. They see Russia as a competitor. And so this war has created a convenient opportunity for them to demand that Russia be boycotted by the world. You know, they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Russia has been trying to sell natural gas to Germany for a long time. And the United States used this war as an opportunity to blow up a natural gas pipeline. This is fact, right? I mean, that natural gas pipeline was pretty clearly blown up by the United States to make sure that Russia couldn't sell any natural gas to European Union countries like Germany, like Sweden, like Denmark. This war is a money-making operation for the ultra-rich, but it's not, there's no victory that they can have. This is just an attempt to hurt Russia financially, to hand out cash to their buddies. And it's having a huge cost in terms of civilian lives and military lives. People are dying on the battlefield every day in a situation that the United States completely created and has exacerbated and has refused to let be resolved, all just so that they can fight their competitor, Russia. And this is absolutely horrendous. And one thing that drives me up the wall is this endless amount of so-called concern for the people of Ukraine that we hear from Americans. Whenever you start talking this way, liberals get all fired up and they start telling you a sob story about, I read about this Ukrainian person who died, and some of these stories are true and some of them aren't. But if you really care about the Ukrainian people, you would want to negotiate. You would want to resolve the conflict. You would want to resolve the conflict. They don't want that. They just want to demonize Russia. They just want, Russia is evil. And it's beyond me how these people can't see how selective their outrage is. The only reason they know the sob story that they heard is because mainstream media bothered to tell it to them. The USA has bombed and destroyed so many countries, and we never get to hear the sob stories from those countries. We never get to hear the sob stories of the Iraqis who died in shock and awe. We never do we get to hear the sob stories of the Libyans who had their homes destroyed by the NATO bombs, how the country with the highest life expectancy in Africa was bombed to shreds. We never get to hear their sob stories. But liberals, all you do is you just show them, oh, here's this Ukrainian person who died. And they immediately feel empathy for them and all the people the USA has killed and all the people the Ukrainian Nazis have killed and all the people that US-backed regime change wars have killed. They don't matter because they didn't get the story dangled in front of them. Right? These people, they cry on command. They sob on command. They feel empathy when they're told to. They have selective outrage. They are outraged when mainstream media tells them that they are allowed to be outraged. And it's infuriating. It's infuriating to me. And, you look at this whole situation, like, yes, this is a criminal terrorist act, this attack on the bridge in Crimea. No question about it. But the bridge is already operational. Russia's not going to be defeated by this. And a couple other things. The Black Sea grain deal. Russia's not only a major supplier of oil and natural gas to the world, Russia is also a major supplier of grain and fertilizer. Russia's got a lot of farms, and Russia produces a lot of fertilizer. And this war, and the USA using this war to push Russia completely off of the global markets, has had a pretty big consequence, which is making it very difficult for Russia to sell its fertilizer and sell its grain. And many countries around the world depend on grain from Russia, depend on fertilizer from Russia to grow their crops. So the United States has negotiated this deal with Russia called the Black Sea grain deal. And the idea is that Russia will agree to certain things, and the United States and its allies will agree to certain things, and they'll enable Russia to send the grain and send the fertilizer around the world. Well, this deal has been extended several times, but the whole time Russia has been at the United Nations pointing out that the USA is not holding up its end of the bargain. They may lift the sanctions on one bank, but the ship that's going to go pick the grain up is afraid to port. I mean, there's many examples of this, where the economic warfare against Russia is fought from many different angles. And they say, all right, Russia will lift this sanction, and they don't tell them about the other sanction. It's manipulative. And in particular, one ingredient that is included in a lot of fertilizers is called ammonia. And Russia has said, if we're going to export fertilizer, you have to let us pump the ammonia. You have to unblock the ammonia pipeline. Well, hasn't happened. The ammonia has remained blocked, and it's remained blocked, and it's remained blocked, and it's remained blocked. And so finally Russia said, fine, United States, you know what? You're gonna not allow us to utilize ammonia. You're gonna keep the ammonia blocked. You're not gonna fulfill your end of the agreement. We're pulling out of the deal. The deal expired July 17th. And of course, they're immediately saying, wow, Russia is starving the world. No, Russia's not. Russia doesn't want to be locked out of the global economy. Russia would like to be able to trade on the international markets just like any other country. You have specifically isolated them. You put sanctions on all their banks and all their companies and all the ships that go there and all the ships that dock there. You've made it very difficult to do business with Russia. And then Russia's pointed out this is going to cause a food crisis, and people are going to starve because of this. People aren't going to get the fertilizer they need. They're not going to get the grain they need. So you sat down with Russia, you made a deal. All right, well, we can set up this deal for you. And then you didn't fulfill your end of the deal. If it's anyone's fault that people in the developing world are not going to get the grain, it's the United States. And let me add that BlackRock has been going around the world demanding that countries wreck their agricultural sector by going organic. And it had a horrendous effect in Sri Lanka. And that they are really pushing this degrowth stuff. They are really pushing this degrowth stuff. I am telling you that there is a group of people among the ultra rich that have a Malthusian agenda. They think there are too many people in the world. They want to resolve the capitalist crisis by driving down the population. Maybe you didn't hear, but Kamala Harris recently slipped and said, reduce population in a speech recently. That's what their agenda is. And they want to drive down the population. They want to reduce consumption in order to stay at the top, right? That they are trying to stabilize the capitalist economy with degrowth methods. And they are determined to do that. And part of doing that is weakening global crop output and reducing the amount of food in the world. It's maniacal. It is absolutely maniacal. And so Russia, being a major food, grain, fertilizer, agricultural exporting country, they're using this war as an opportunity to push their agenda. It's absolutely, absolutely horrendous. And then, of course, the way it gets reported in American media is that, Russia just, it pulled out of this deal. They just want to kill people. So I wanted to mention that. Another news item I wanted to mention real quick. North Korea recently rejected offers to talk, right? There was an offer made by the Biden administration just today for North Korea to sit down at the table and negotiate. And they rejected it. And people say, well, why did they reject it? They rejected it because everything that moved ahead under the Trump administration has been rolled back. In case you haven't noticed, the Biden administration has been coordinating with the South Korean government to carry out these very provocative military drills in which they practice the all-out destruction of North Korea. They take all their military, all their airplanes, all their soldiers, and they run them right to the border. But it's a drill. And every time they do one of these drills, North Korea wonders which one will actually be for real. And these war games that the United States carries out on the Korean Peninsula are highly provocative. They're highly provocative. They're highly threatening. And Biden has resumed these provocative drills. And on top of that, he's talked about destroying North Korea. When the South Korean President Yoon came to the United States, he talked about destroying North Korea. He's talked about the destruction of North Korea. North Korea has no reason to sit down with the Biden administration. Because the Biden administration has basically reversed everything the Trump administration has done. And you don't talk when you're in that kind of atmosphere. Right now, North Korea is trying to show that they have strength. They're shooting off intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're making clear they're capable of defending themselves in a war situation. They are under attack right now. The rhetoric from the United States, the rhetoric from South Korea, the military drills and provocations from the United States and from South Korea have escalated. And this is not a situation where North Korea feels they can just sit down at the table. And that's not good, because things were moving in a different direction when Donald Trump was president. Things were moving in a different direction. And Donald Trump has said that if he gets back into office, they will move in a different direction once again. And the North Koreans knew. They knew that Donald Trump was more willing to make a deal with them. Even before Donald Trump was elected, they were already hinting at that in their publications. They knew it. They knew it. Loud sound? I'm not hearing any loud sound. What was the loud sound? I haven't heard any loud sound. Was there a loud sound on the live? I didn't even hear any loud sound. That's very odd. That's very odd. But that's kind of my news update for today. But I just wanted to mention a few other things that are relevant here in this conversation, which is that, I have emphasized over and over and over that we are anti-imperialists. That capitalism in the 21st century is imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism that Vladimir Lenin wrote about. It is capitalism in its monopoly stage. It is the domination of the world by trusts, cartels, and syndicates, big banks. And that imperialism changed everything, right? In the era of imperialism, not only are working people in the developing countries exploited, but they are super exploited. And you have a layer of big bankers and wealthy elites in the Western countries that not only are they making profits, they're making super profits. And that countries around the world are fighting for their national liberation as countries. And the working class, of course, is central in these struggles. And that's why these national liberation movements have almost always turned into some kind of socialist movement, because the working class is central, because the third world bourgeoisie is too weak to fight on its own. It needs the working class to have its back. That's how Che Guevara explained it. But the fight today is the fight against imperialism, the imperialist global apparatus. And what is interesting and what has changed is that in this time, the imperialist ultra monopolies, the entrenched power of super rich corporations based in the Western countries, the imperialists, the ultra monopolies, they are trying to drive down and grind the US and global economy to a halt in order to keep their power. We know that Richard Nixon, when he was trying to set the stage for the CIA coup in Chile, he said, "Make the economy scream." Well, now the imperialists are looking at the global economy and they are saying, "Make the economy scream." And if you read The Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, you read about the World Economic Forum, they are trying to make the global economy scream so they can keep their super profits. They don't want the economy to get better. They want a drastic reduction of living standards, a drastic reduction of the population, a drastic reduction of consumption. And if you want to read all about it, if you want to learn about what they're doing, the book that I recommend you read, in addition to my own works, is called Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt. Because during the Great Depression of the 1930s, they did the exact same thing. They tried to save their system and stabilize capitalism with degrowth methods, reducing consumption, creating an underclass of slave laborers. This book from the 1930s, from R. Palm Dutt, explains in detail the roots of the 1930s capitalist crisis, the Great Depression, and the economic methods being employed by the capitalists in order to try and save their system. And you can read all about it. They did the exact same thing back in the 1930s. They had similar entities, just like the World Economic Forum. They had something called the World Economic Council. And they tried to save their system with degrowth. And honestly, there's a lot of new theories floating around. But if you want to understand what's going on in the world and why it's happening, you really only have to understand the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Karl Marx explained that the worker is never paid enough to buy the product that he produces. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to purchase the product he produces. And that the profits of the capitalist can only come from the value created by human labor, and that when the role of the worker in production is decreased, when fewer and fewer workers are hired to work in production, when you can create a product with less and less human labor involved, this problem of overproduction, where the worker cannot buy back what he produces, is exacerbated, and the rate of profits that the capitalist makes is constantly decreasing. And the built-in problems of the capitalist system are exacerbated by large technological leaps. When there is a huge leap in technology and the ability of the capitalist to produce products greatly expands and human labor is greatly reduced and technology and the power of the machine advances, in a rational society, that would be a good thing. It would be a great thing. But in a system of production organized for profit, in the capitalist economy, this leads to a prolonged economic crisis. And this is Marxism. This is what Karl Marx spends pages and pages and pages explaining. This is what Capital is about. This is what Karl Marx gets back to in all of his writing. The problem of poverty created by abundance, poverty amid plenty, the built-in irrationality of the capitalist system. And there has been a huge effort to obscure this, to prevent you from understanding this basic concept that explains the entire crisis that we are in right now. I wrote a book, Where is America Going? I drew heavily from Nelson Peary and his great book, The Future is Up to Us. I drew from Fred Goldstein and his book, Low Wage Capitalism. I drew from Sam Marcy and his book, High Tech, Low Pay. This is the basis of the crisis. And there's a huge effort to make sure you never understand this. There's a huge effort to get you to think that overproduction means just creating too much stuff. That is not what it means. Overproduction means that the worker can't buy back what he produces. That's what it means. It's a problem inherent in production organized for profit that prevents the needed abundance and rise in living standards from coming about as a result of technological advancement. Overproduction doesn't mean you're just producing too much. The degrowthers claim that they talk about overproduction when they don't. They don't understand the concept. They intentionally distort it. There's a big effort to prevent you from understanding this basic understanding, this basic stuff that the Marxists of previous decades understood. And thank you. David Fox is pointing people toward my book because I talk about it. This was common sense during the Great Depression. Marxists explained the problem of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit. They explained the Great Depression very easily. And the problem in our time is that most so-called Marxists are degrowthers. Most so-called Marxists are working for the ultra-rich. They're working for the ultra-rich as the ultra-rich try to save capitalism by forcibly grinding into poverty, forcibly reducing consumption. But if you go around the world, the communists of the world, in Vietnam, in Cuba, in China, in Nicaragua, they are not degrowing people. They are forcibly organizing to raise productive forces, to increase living standards. There could very soon be a strike among the Teamsters. There could also very soon be other labor battles ahead at Amazon, elsewhere. And this could be decisive. This could be a decisive moment. This coming period could be decisive. But you have to understand the geopolitical crisis in the context of this ongoing economic crisis, because the capitalists are desperate to save their system. The only way they can stay at the top is by making the world poorer and poorer and poorer. Whereas there are many parts of the world that have broken free from their system. Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, Nicaragua. There are many countries that have broken out of their system. A big section of the economy of Africa has broken out of their system at this point. It's friendlier to Russia and China, doing business with China. And that section of the world just keeps growing because it's not held back by the irrationality of profits in command. And so the only hope that the ultra-rich and those who dominate capitalism in the West have to save their system is degrowth. And degrowth has nothing to do with socialism. Socialism seeks to create a world with so much wealth and so much abundance that the very need for a state can go away, that the very need for social hierarchies of any kind can go away, the very need to regulate consumption, where people can go away. We seek a society of vast technological abundance, a society where labor becomes life's prime want, no longer a necessity, meaning people only work because they feel like it, to stop being bored. Labor is no longer a necessity. We seek a society in which people can just do what they feel like doing and take what they need, take what they want, from each according to his own ability, to each according to his needs. But we understand that the roadblock to getting to that level of wealth and abundance in society is the irrational profit system. And that what we need is a government of action, a working class government to control the means of production, to control the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power, so that growth continues. We need the people, society, to take control of the means of production, the factories, the big farms, the big box stores, the oil wells, power plants. We need the means of production, the centers of economic power, to be seized by society so that they operate for the benefit of society and not simply for the profits of a wealthy few. We need society to control the means of production. In order to get beyond the irrationality of the capitalist system. And we know that the working class majority, the wage working class, those who sell their labor power, they will be the bulk of those who rise up against deteriorating conditions and demand control of the means of production. But the working class will lead a coalition of all society to rise up and seize control of the means of production so that this problem, this irrational problem that's holding back growth and development, is overcome, and we can march ahead toward that ultimate goal of a stateless and classless world. This is Marxism. And it's this ideology that made China what it is today. It's this ideology that defeated the Nazis in World War II, invented space travel, raised millions of people in Russia and the surrounding countries up out of poverty, electrified, and wiped out illiteracy, built the world's largest power plant. It's this ideology that's why Cuba has a higher life expectancy than most countries in Latin America, has a better medical system than any other country in the region, has the best medical school in the world, sends more literacy volunteers around the world than any other country in the world. It's because of this that Nicaragua has been able to just take a bite out of poverty and electrify their whole country. There have been many great achievements of socialism. Under socialism, Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. Gaddafi built Libya up to be a very prosperous country by having public control of the means of production. Read about it in the Green Book. He built the great man-made river. There's many examples of socialism being used to raise people up and increase living standards. And there's a reason that neither the left nor the right believe in socialism. The right wing believe in free market capitalism. They believe everything bad is communism, is socialism. And they believe in free market capitalism. And the left, they claim, some of them, to believe in socialism, but they think socialism just means a welfare state. They think that socialism just means, a voluntary, profit-oriented worker cooperative. Socialism means society taking control of the means of production. Socialism means that the centers of economic power are taken under the ownership of society and forced to work in the interests of society. That's what socialism is. Socialism is overcoming the irrationality of capitalism and having a centrally planned economy so that we can grow. It is about unleashing human growth and creativity to an even higher plane, beyond anything we can imagine. Socialism is the most optimistic ideology in history. It says we can get to the ultimate goal of communism, a stateless, classless world. We are socialists. We are absolutely socialists in the Center for Political Innovation. We're not left. We're not right. We're not liberals. We're not conservatives. We're socialists. We understand the problem is capitalism. The problem is production organized for profit. The problem is the irrationality of capitalism. And the answer is socialism. And socialism comes in many different forms. Marxism, Leninism has probably been the primary form of socialism in the world. But you also have Islamic socialism, like in Libya. You have Ba'athist Arab socialism, like in Iraq and Syria. In Iran, they very much have a system where the state controls the means of production. They call it not capitalism, but Islam. They have 5-year economic plans. They have a dominant state sector in the economy. They have Bolivarian socialism in Venezuela and in Nicaragua and other countries in Latin America. China currently calls its system socialism with Chinese characteristics. And it's, rooted in Marxism, Leninism, but also Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, and lately Xi Jinping's thoughts for a prosperous socialist society. I got Xi Jinping's books here right behind me. This is what we're about on these streams. And the global situation validates and affirms our worldview more thoroughly every day. However, we have a responsibility to put this view forward because no one else is saying it. No one else is saying it. We stand alone in the Western world. The right wing isn't saying it. The left wing isn't saying it. We have to oppose war. We have to stand up for the jobs and the living standards of the working people. We have to reject the culture wars. We have to build a movement for peace, jobs, democracy, and equality. This is what it means. And we at the Center for Political Innovation, we have been doing our best to do it. I'm going to show you a quick couple videos here. You know, there was a rally at the United Nations called by some religious leaders. And we at the Center for Political Innovation, we marched into the rally. And I posted a big, long video that had everything that went on that day. But a lot of people didn't watch it because it was so big and long and it was just speech after speech. But this is just a short clip. This is when we walked in to the religious rally at the United Nations. A bunch of religious leaders, clergymen, Jews, Muslims, Christians had a rally at the UN for peace. And we brought the Center for Political Innovation's anti-imperialist contingent to that rally. Here we go.
Russia, peace with China, peace with Russia, peace with China. It's time to stand for peace here at the United Nations. We are marching up to the religious rally. Russia and China are not our enemy. Peace with Russia, peace with China, 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 peace with Russia, peace with China.
So next up, we'd like to welcome up the founder of the Center for Political Innovation.
We're here today to do something that brings us all together. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, leftists, rightists, whatever your ideology is, war still kills you. War still destroys you. And what's happening in the world right now is very, very frightening. Praying for peace with China. We're praying for peace in the Caribbean, peace in Latin America, peace in Asia, peace in Africa. It's something we can all agree on. And in the back, I want you to notice we brought a banner with us. And that banner has a beautiful picture on it. And that's a picture, regardless of how you feel about American politics, that was a historic moment. When Donald Trump shook hands with Kim Jong-un, that was a historic moment. And one thing I think that we can recognize here is that if Korea could come together, if Korea could reconcile, the whole world could come together if we had peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, that was a great day at the United Nations. It was great. And if you want to join in these kind of activities, you got to join the Center for Political Innovation. You got to join the CPI. You got to become a dues-paying member. It only costs $10 a month to be a member of the CPI. But if you want to be involved in our activities and be involved in the planning, etc., you got to just join the CPI. Go to cpiusa.org. But I also wanted to mention, I wanted to show this is just the opening ceremony from our recent event that we did in New York City, because we begin every CPI event. We don't just start. We actually begin with the Pledge of Unity. And so I wanted to show you, this is the opening of our recent CPI event. So I'm going to pull that up here. I'm going to skip ahead. Oh, I can't. Hold on. Gotta figure this out. Technical difficulties. But I'm going to show you the opening ceremony of our recent CPI event that we did in New York City. Because I want you to see this. Because we begin every CPI event, with the Pledge of Unity. So yeah, I'm going to put that on. Hold up. I'm just going to put on, you're going to see how our event began. This is the first video we have from our recent event. So I'm going to come on and share my screen here. And there we go. Okay. Can you all see that? Is that good? All right. So now,
if everyone could stand for the CPI Pledge of Unity. A copy is in the binder. Please stand and please raise your right hand. We pledge, and repeat after me. We pledge that we shall remember this unity forged at the end of the Second World War.
We shall remember this unity forged at the end of the Second World War.
not only today, not only this week, this year, but always.
Not only today, not only this week, this year, but always.
Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for.
Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for.
We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world.
We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world.
All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs.
All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs.
To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth.
To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth.
To build a deep and sincere international friendship among the peoples of the world.
To build a deep and sincere international friendship among the peoples of the world.
To keep a just, lasting peace, to eliminate want, frustration, and enforced idleness.
To keep a just, lasting peace, to eliminate want, frustration, and enforced idleness.
We have come to confirm the unity of all people, to salute our comrades who have died.
We have come to confirm the unity of all people, to salute our comrades who have died.
And pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains, and bold enthusiasm shall never more be wasted in war.
And pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains, and bold enthusiasm shall never more be wasted in war.
Thank you. Now, if everyone could remain standing for our flag ceremony.
CPI, 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 CPI. Dare to win!
Dare to struggle!
Dare to win!
Dare to struggle!
Dare to win!
Dare to struggle!
Dare to win!
Out of the movement!
To the masses!
Out of the movement!
To the masses!
Out of the movement!
To the masses!
Out of the movement!
To the masses! Woo! Please sit down.
Our first speaker will be Noah Shank, who will give a brief activist report describing what happened at our anti-imperialist rally this afternoon, marching through the streets of New York City. And he will also be introducing the Uber representative.
All right, I wasn't really expecting to give this, so I'm not sure what I'll be able to say. But this afternoon, a group of us gathered in Manhattan to do what the left has for years failed to do, and that is to go out amongst the people and to talk to them about ideas that are very important: to reject the police state, to stop the potential for World War III, and to let them know that our enemies are not abroad, that they're here at home, and they're bleeding us dry. We also were very honored to have some representatives from the Uhuru organization here who have been brutally attacked by the FBI. Now, we were in the heart of New York. We were in the heart of the American empire. We're also in the heart of American liberalism. And you wouldn't expect, based on the propaganda that we hear, that the American people would be supportive of this message. But when we went out there today, what we saw was a lot of thumbs up, a lot of people filming, a lot of people supporting us. And we also saw a lot of people who would come up to us and talk to us, and they would tell us our stories. We had a gentleman in a red shirt come up to us and tell us that he was part of the left for years and years and years, and eventually he had to walk away because he saw that it was going nowhere. Well, we say that maybe that part of the left is going nowhere, but we know that we're going somewhere. And that somewhere is a real America that can actually represent the people.
All right. So that was the opening of our event that we just had in New York City. So yeah, we are marching ahead. There will be another morning message bright and early tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So yeah, all right, folks, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? And then after that, I'll start answering your super chat questions. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. I see Mark in Utica, New York. Very good. Mark, we got John McCarthy in Chicago, Lawrence Johnson in Chicago, David Schlesinger in Cleveland, Jay Hescott, 6 in Albany, Alec in Los Angeles, Bendigo, Australia, David Fox, Lana in New York City, Mima in California, Gabby Hernandez in Chicago, Rice in Adelaide, Australia. We got Lisa Smith from Western Pennsylvania, Neil Frazier in Hong Kong, Zach in Tennessee, Patrick in Maine, Cass Allen in Pittsburgh, Briggy in Pennsylvania. Welcome, everybody. Names and locations. We got Karen Mendes in Germany. Shout out to you, Karen. Good friend of our work here. We got Reza in Iran. We got Chris in Salt Lake City. We got Bob Troy in New York. We got Gonzalo from Argentina. We got Sage Neon Fuzz in Milwaukee. Welcome. St. David's, Bermuda. We got Clinton Frazier in London. We got Mariah from North Carolina. We got Gonzalo from Argentina. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. So glad to be here tonight with all of you. We're doing great stuff here, and it's really, really great to have a group of people who are committed to these ideals, who are standing in solidarity. We are really, really excited about having all of you here. We got Alex from Brazil. We got Balthazar from Oakland. We got Lori in Oklahoma. Welcome, Lori. Glad to have you. Lori does great work, by the way. She just did an interview with both Scott Ritter and the Russian deputy ambassador to the UN. That was phenomenal. She's been getting harassment online ever since. We got the Seasoned Noob in China. Welcome, Mr. Seasoned Noob. Glad you're there. Glad you're here with us. Welcome, everybody. All righty. So now I'm moving on to the Super Chats Q&A section of tonight's program. So please send super chats. So far, I've only got 5 of them. I will do my best to give decent answers to those 5 comments or questions. But I do want to remind you all that you are one of the privileged ones. You are watching this live. You are one of the 10% who are watching this live. So you have the ability to make this conversation go however you want it to go. So I would encourage you to get me talking. Ask me a question that gets me talking. Shoot me a softball and I will knock it out of the park. Or you can shoot me a fastball and I can still knock it out of the park. I see we got Molly McGuire. We got Gribble in Rogue Valley, Oregon. We got Harold Dogbottom in Kakalaki. So yeah, send me a super chat, get me talking. That's what I encourage you to do in the second half of our show. You guys make the second half of the show happen. I come on here as much as I possibly can. So if you're here watching, please get me talking about something. Zephyr is in Oregon. Welcome, Zephyr. Glad to have you. And send me a super chat to get me talking about what is important to you. And the super chats are a way that I know what the audience wants me to talk about. It creates a conversation. The same week, Ukraine promised not to use our cluster bombs on civilians. They bombed civilians on that bridge. And John is absolutely right about this. And I was on Sputnik Radio with Dr. Wilmer Leon and Garland Nixon. And I pointed out that this notion, they said, well, we have to give cluster bombs to Ukraine, they said, because their argument was that that without these cluster bombs, Ukraine wouldn't be able to defend itself. Well, folks, how the hell is a cluster bomb a defensive weapon? Right? I mean, how does this work? Oh my God, the bad guys are coming over the hill. Quick, get out the cluster bombs. Doesn't work that way. A cluster bomb is a bomb that you drop and it spreads out over a widespread area. And some of the bombs detonate as soon as they hit the ground, and some of them don't. And some of them remain undetonated, and they're bright and shiny, and they look like toys, and kids go to play with them, and they get blown up. Cluster bombs are an awful, awful weapon. An awful, awful weapon. And it is absolutely not a defensive weapon. And so and there is no way that the cluster bomb doesn't kill civilians. When you drop the cluster bomb and it spreads out over that area and the munitions go different places, those munitions they don't have a detector on them that goes into, it's like, oh, this is a civilian area, better not explode. It doesn't work that way, right? If there's civilians in the area and those cluster bombs hit them, they die. And if the cluster bombs don't detonate, they remain in those civilian areas until somebody drives over them with their car, or until some kid picks up something shiny, doesn't know what it does, and gets blown up. It is awful. And the fact that they would supply these weapons to the Kiev regime that is known to have neo-Nazis openly in its service. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. Cluster bombs, cluster munitions are horrendous, as Lori is saying. And I mean, there's just nothing. And this bridge that they attacked, as John McCarthy is accurately pointing out, this bridge that they've attacked is a civilian bridge. There was civilian traffic on it. So their promise when they got the cluster bombs not to use them on civilians, which doesn't even make any sense. They just attacked a bridge. So there you go. Great observation, John. All right. Next, we got David Fox. And David Fox says the U.S. doesn't want to win the war, but to continue it anywhere. And that is absolutely correct. Permanent war for the empire. Permanent war to stabilize capitalism. Permanent war to keep the money flowing to the military corporations. Permanent war to constantly be harassing and beating down countries that have broken out of their imperialist system around the world. It is utterly outrageous. They have been waging a kind of permanent war for decades now. They're constantly at war because their economy needs it and because it's the only thing they can do to hold off the emerging alternative economy that's rising around the world. And so if they can just continue this kind of, harassment operation, this war of attrition, they can constantly be waging proxy wars against the various countries that have broken free. It's a way to stimulate the economy. It's a way to try and roll back or at least hold back the inevitable, which is the new anti-imperialist global economy arising. It's vicious what they're doing. It's absolutely vicious. Did anyone hear Tucker Carlson asking Mike Pence about how they can worry about Ukraine when our cities crumble to the ground? I'm going to find that clip for you all because it was a moment. It was weird. Let me just put it this way. You would think that Mike Pence, usually when a politician says something stupid, right? Usually when a politician says a stupid thing, they get this look on their face after they do it, and they go, oh, shit. That did not happen. I think Mike Pence completely meant to say exactly what he said, right? And it was an amazing contribution on the part of Tucker Carlson to get Mike Pence to say what he said. I do not think this was an accident. I do not think this was an accident. I really do believe that this was intentional. This is exactly Mike Pence. He doesn't look apologetic after he says it. He doesn't look like, oh shit, I just said something I wasn't supposed to say. Doesn't look that way at all. I'm going to show you the clip on here because I want you to see this, right? I mean, it's really something special. It is really something special what you're about to see. And I mean, there's no way to really do it justice without just showing you the clip. So I'm gonna show you the clip here if I can download it quick enough. Hold on, hold your horses. I want to show it to you because hold on. I'm just gonna put it on the screen here because it needs to be seen. Hold on, right? We're just going to put it on the screen for the whole world to see because there's no way we can do it justice by describing it. No. This was a great, I mean, this was a moment where it's like, on the one hand, you're going, did he just say that? But on the other hand, you're like, he doesn't seem apologetic. And yeah, that's what he means. Watch, see it for yourself. Here we go.
I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years. Yeah. Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet, your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad.
Yeah. Do you see that? There's no apology. He's annoyed, right? He can see, if you look at the facial expressions here, there's annoyance as Tucker's saying it. He's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, he's making a point. All right. There's annoyance with it. He doesn't appreciate the anti-imperialist point. He's annoyed that the point is being made. He doesn't like hearing this. And he's just sitting there like, all right, yeah, America first, whatever. Yeah. And he says, that's not my concern. He's just very blatantly, he's just like,
Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden has weakened America at home.
I mean, just blatant. You know, he doesn't care. America's getting worse off while people are sending all kinds of weapons to Ukraine to fight a war against Russia that doesn't benefit the American people in any way. Whatever. Not my concern. Not my concern. I mean, Mike Pence was never wildly popular to begin with, but yeah, I mean that moment. What do you say to that? I mean, no apology about it. He's not going, oh shit, did I just say that? No, it's just, not my concern. Not my concern. There you go. I mean, that's honesty. That's neoconservatism for you folks. That's the neocons. That is the neoconservative movement right there. The only population that Kamala Harris doesn't want to reduce is the prison population. And that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. There's a clip of her that I could dig up of her making fun of people who say, build more schools, less jails. And she's laughing at them like they're stupid, I mean, it's pretty, Kamala Harris, my book on Kamala Harris, my Bread Tube book sold a lot, and I'm glad, but I really wish people would read the Kamala Harris book because there's a lot in that book. It's a short book, but there's a lot of content in there. I really feel like in all of my analysis that I've done, the level of psychological research, political research, there's a lot in that Kamala Harris book. I feel like not as many people have read it as have read my other books, but those who do read my book on Kamala Harris really like it. Liam, Quantum Leap Liam, just did a review of my Kamala Harris book. He read it. He learned a lot from it. My book on Kamala Harris is very important, and she could very well be president. If Joe Biden is elected, Kamala Harris could be the next president of the United States. It's almost guaranteed that Biden will not finish out his term. You never know, right? Miracles happen, but the chances of Biden finishing out his term if he's reelected are quite slim. And, if Biden gets reelected, Kamala Harris will probably, in all likelihood, you could be sure she'll be president. So people should be concerned. Who is Rudolph Hilferding? Gabby, you have asked me some interesting questions before. That's one that will be interesting to answer. Let me just put it that way. How do we handle the bureaucracy combined with edited, manipulated AI generated evidence going forward? Seems like law needs it legalized or reduced. Well, that's something you could ask a legal scholar about. That's a good question, right? Artificial intelligence and its impact on court proceedings. You would have to make sure that something is legit, right? Right, because that's the whole thing about, they say, well, surveillance video can't lie. Well, people can fudge it, right? Fingerprints can't lie. Yeah, but you have to be able to detect fake fingerprints, right? And that with every new level of technology, it has an impact on the legal system. One thing that I will say is a lot of people have it in their heads. They watch those shows like CSI, and they have it in their heads that the police are like doing all kinds of investigations to discover who the real criminal is. No, they're not. No, they're not. When a crime happens, the cops grab somebody. They want to be done with their work as soon as they can, so they grab somebody. And if the person they grab is able to prove they didn't do it, they might drop the charges, or they might, negotiate a plea deal with them. But generally, especially when there's like a high level crime, like a very well publicized murder or an incident where someone prominent's been hurt or something like that, the police just grab somebody, right? And they tend to often try to grab somebody who is, not very articulate. Often they grab a disabled person, who can't really speak in their defense, or someone who English isn't their first language, or someone who's not very articulate, or somebody who has a history of criminal activities. So he might as well have done this one too, or somebody who's got a mental health problem. That's generally how law enforcement operates. And you may not believe that, but you know, it's like there's that movie. I think in Casablanca, there's a line where somebody says, "What is it?" There's been a crime. He says, "Okay, round up the usual suspects," and that tends to be how law enforcement operates, right? They've got a list of people. They got a list of the neighborhood troublemakers, and so you know, if something happens, they go and grab the troublemakers, and you know, and then they do crazy things like they try to make them take polygraph tests. That's one thing they'll do is say, well, if you'll take a polygraph test, you know, they, the police generally, people have it in their heads that they're like Sherlock Holmes or something, right? They're just, you know, they're scouring the scene for evidence to find out who not really. You know, anyone who's ever worked in law enforcement or anyone who's ever worked in the court of law will tell you that is not the case. The cops want to be over and done with their work as soon as they possibly can. They tend to have a list of usual troublemakers, and they bust them. And there are some pretty awful examples of that. You know, and that's something about law enforcement that you know, and then they've also learned the art of kind of browbeating and intimidating people into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. You know, and there's many examples of that too, where they you know, the person will plead not guilty and say they didn't do it, but you know, at the point of their arrest, they were stressed out, they were terrified, and they browbeat the person into a confession, and then they use that confession to convict the person. There's many examples of that. So you know, your question is relevant, certainly relevant, Acorn, but it's not as relevant as many people might be led to believe. If you watch the police shows, you would believe that the police are all, you know, doing all kinds of forensic investigate. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. They usually just grab somebody, usually somebody who's not in a position to defend themselves, and create a story about how they did it. And if the story starts to fall apart, they drop the charges or make a deal with the person. And if the person, you know, if the story doesn't work, there you go. There you go. So now this Gabby, this one perplexes me. I am going to have to Google this because I don't know who Rudolf Hilferding. Rudolf Hilferding was an Austrian-born Marxist, socialist, and chief theoretician for the Social Democratic Party of Germany during the Weimar Republic. There you go. I learned something new every day. In Germany, after the failure of the German Revolution, they established the Weimar Republic. They voted on a capitalist constitution. And apparently this Rudolf Hilferding was a prominent politician in Germany during the Weimar period. He was a leader of the Social Democratic Party in Germany. So there you go. You learn something new every day. I have read some history of the Weimar Republic. There's a great book called The Failure of a Revolution. The Failure of a Revolution. That's a book that I recommend. And it's it kind of shows how the Social Democratic Party prevented a revolution from taking place. Kind of gives a history of the events. I really recommend people read The Failure of a Revolution. About the 1919 uprising in Germany. There's a book called Barricades in Berlin that is a novel, and it's about the 1929 Bloody May uprising in Berlin, in the Wedding district of Berlin, when the communists seized control of the district. That's very famous. I recommend people read that. Got it. You're on the list. So there you go. But yeah, the Weimar period in Germany, it's fascinating, and it's very hard to find anything about that period. You know, when I go to Strand Bookstore, the biggest bookstore in the world is in New York City. It is actually literally the biggest bookstore in the world. It has the most space of books of any individual bookstore in the world. But you go there and you go to the German history section, and they have everything you ever wanted to know about Hitler. Hitler's dog, Hitler's niece, Hitler's cousin, Hitler's shoes, Hitler's psychiatrist, Hitler's relatives, Hitler's bunker inside, the inside story. Hitler. They got everything you ever wanted to hear about Hitler, they've got it. But the Weimar period, when, They were setting the stage for the Nazis to eventually take power. There's not much written on it. And that's much more important. If you want to actually understand how the Nazis came to power and what set the stage for fascism in Germany, you really need to understand how they came to power. You don't need to just understand Hitler's dog, the 12-part biography. Now, there are a couple books that I have read on the Weimar period in Germany that have been very helpful. And I want to see if I have them. Do I have them here? Just looking on my bookshelf here. So yes. So there's a couple books that I would recommend if you want to learn the history of the Weimar Republic. This one is called The History of the German Republic. The History of the German Republic by Arthur Rosenberg. He's a professor at the University of Berlin. And he was a Marxist, and he wrote The History of the German Republic. That's a history of the Weimar Republic. I recommend that. I also recommend, there's a book called Barricades in Berlin. Where do I have that? I have this book it's called Barricades in Berlin. And it is about the German Marxists, and it's about the armed struggles that broke out during the Weimar period. Trying to see where I've got that book. If I have that book around here somewhere. Is it on another bookshelf or? Just trying to look backwards at my bookshelf here to see where it is. There's a book called Barricades in Berlin. It's pretty good. And then there's also a book called Hitler's Banker. Hitler's Banker, which is very good, which goes over the life of Hjalmar Horace Greeley Schacht. Hjalmar Horace Greeley Schacht, who was the main economist of Nazi Germany. And I would recommend that book as well. In fact, the book that I probably learned the most about the economics of the Weimar period in Germany and the rise of fascism and the economics of fascism, I would recommend reading Hitler's Banker by John Weitz, which is a biography of the main economist of the Third Reich. That said, I will say that also there's a very good analysis of the economics of Nazi Germany in Lynn Marcus's book, Dialectical Economics. Lynn Marcus was the pen name of Lyndon LaRouche back when he still considered himself to be a Marxist. And he wrote a very, very, very good book called Dialectical Economics that put forward a perspective on many aspects of the global economy, including the rise of fascism. So I would recommend that. And yeah, my book, Barricades in Berlin, is over there. So there you go. All righty. Did you ever consider going into law? Yeah, I did at one point. There was an older man who was kind of a mentor to me when I lived in Cleveland, and he was recommending that I go to law school, but it just was not something I wanted to do. I figured things out. College was not a fun time for me. My whole life, I was told by everyone, "Oh, you're going to love college. College is going to be so amazing, Caleb. Oh, you're one of those thinking people. You're going to love college." I hated college, right? In the Cold War, I might have liked college, right? Colleges used to be kind of a bastion of free thought or something. They ain't that no more. And I absolutely hated college. I'll be honest with you. I really didn't like college. I learned a lot in college, but not in the classroom. I learned a lot elsewhere. And, after college, I spent a little while in Cleveland where I did organizing around the issue of police brutality, which was very meaningful. And that wasn't trendy back then to talk about police brutality, but I did organize around the issue of police brutality. I videotaped an instance of police brutality, got 2 young women acquitted in court. And then after that, I moved to New York City. I moved to New York City just in time for Occupy Wall Street. And the rest is history. So I've been doing a lot, but law school is never something I've considered. Well, it was something I considered at one time, but it wasn't in the deck of cards for me. So there you go. How do you prepare yourself for the week? For the week? What do you mean for the week? I tend to do things a little bit more day by day, my weekends are a little more chill. We have the CPI Zoom call every Saturday at 3 p.m. And then on Sunday morning, I go to church, and then I usually, take myself out for a nice little lunch after church. And then I come home, You know, my weekends tend to be a little slower, and I work from home mostly. I mean, sometimes I go into Manhattan and I meet a cameraman and do stories with him, but for the most part, I work from home. So yeah, there you go. I mean, I don't know. How do I prepare for the week? I don't prepare for weeks necessarily. I prepare for days. I do things day by day or sometimes month by month. I mean, it depends what I've got on the agenda, but I don't have a weekly routine, I wouldn't say. But thanks for asking. I don't really have a weekly routine. All right. Hands off Uhuru formed a fight back coalition, and they're asking individuals and organizations to join. Well, the Center for Political Innovation and myself will both join. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of filling out the proper paperwork. We certainly want to support anything that the Uhuru movement does. They are under attack by the government. They're charging them with being Russian agents. They're trying to outlaw anti-imperialist dissent, and we are on their side. We are on their side, no question about it. So yeah, we are with them. And on that note, it appears that I'm out of super chats. So I guess we'll cut it off here. I'm going to be on RT in the next couple hours. So tune in to RT. Going to be on RT in a couple hours. And then I'm going to go to bed after that. So yeah, be in touch and we'll talk soon. I'm going to put on the closing music. Yeah. Do. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.